but it had Dylan O'Brien. No, they were bad. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I know I say this every time, but it's been a long time and I'm sorry for that. Today I'm going to be doing a part 2 to ranking book to screen adaptations because you guys chose it in my last poll. And if you missed my last poll, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so that you don't miss the next one. Also, let me know what other videos you guys would like to see in the comments. So for this video, like last time, I am ranking stuff that I have at least attempted to consume both the book and screen adaptation for. So I'm not ranking stuff that I only read the book for or stuff that I've only watched the screen adaptation for because that wouldn't be fair, but feel free to leave your comments below anyway on what you guys think of those, especially if you watched a different adaptation. For the tiers, I've kept them mostly the same. I've taken out The Power of Lady Gaga Compels You because we no longer need to rank Percy Jackson. At the top is graduated film school from the University of Huntington with a PhD in serving. Again, if you know, you know. The second tier, I've changed it to minimal slay, which means it was good but not great, or it managed to exceed my expectations when the bar was low. Third tier is we've lost the plot, which means not the worst, but also pretty bad. It usually means that it deviated a lot from the book and in a bad way. And lastly is whitecrustydog.jpg because I am a victim. Firstly is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I recently covered this book on my channel. It is about a girl named Pip who tries to uncover the mystery behind the death of Andy Bell. The book was written by Holly Jackson and it's very suspenseful, engaging, and full of twists. However, I found the series to be very disappointing. I was so excited for it to be turned into a show because you would think that it would allow them to have a lot more time to cover what happens in the book and do it right, until I learned that it was going to be only 6 short episodes, so they left out a lot. Like, what was the point of that? Like, why was Nat De Silva Andy's best friend in the series when they were enemies in the book? And where were some of the characters like Stanley? I feel like they took out a lot of the suspense and the twist, which is weird because that's what made the book good. I will say, having seen the series after reading the book, I think I would have enjoyed the series a lot more if I had watched that first. But alas, here we are. I don't think it's bottom tier material, but I'm gonna have to put it in the third tier because it was just incredibly different and not in ways I like. Secondly is Pride and Prejudice, which is a classic novel by Jane Austen, as I'm sure most of you know, and there are so many adaptations for it. I watched the 2005 Keira Knightley version, and I've seen parts of the 95 Colin Firth version, so I feel like I can't fully rank that, so I'm going to be ranking the 2005 one. It was okay. It wasn't very true to the book, which is what the 95 version has over it, but I do like Colin Firth's Mr. Darcy more than Matthew Macfadyen's version. But the 2005 version does have a much higher cinematic value for the cinematography and score, etc. And it did give us the iconic, "I'm 27, I've no money, no prospects, I'm already a burden to my parents, and I'm frightened."
I'm 27 years old. I've no money and no prospects. I'm already a burden to my parents. And I'm frightened.
However, as an adaptation, it was just okay. I think I like it more than most other book truthers, but I'm gonna have to put this one in the second tier. Thirdly is My Lady Jane, which is a historical romantasy set in the Tudor era of England, and it follows Lady Jane Grey, her forced marriage to Guilford Dudley, and her reign as Queen of England, all while handling the social divide between Verities, or humans, and Ethians, who are humans that can take on an animal form. The book was written by Cynthia Hand, Jodie Meadows, and Brody Ashton, and it was turned into a TV show on Amazon Prime Video. When I went through the book, I noticed it was a lot more innocent and had a lot more lore for the audience. Also in the books, Jane is Ethian, which who knows whether they would have revealed that if the show got a second season, but no, it was canceled and I'm still mad about it. I think that the show did a really good job though, like it knew its audience because it was a better Bridgerton, and I feel like the acting was really good, the side characters and the humor was also very good. It's definitely different from the book, but I think it was done very well, and I'm still mad that we'll never get a season 2 because we just can't have nice things, so I'm gonna put this one at the top. Now we have The Idea of You, written by Robin Lee and turned into a Netflix movie. I have a confession to make. I read this book 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago, because once it was announced that they were making a movie out of this book and Anne Hathaway would be starring in it, I picked it up and I read it online. and I made a video on it. I never posted the video on it. It has only been shown to my 4 closest friends, and I am going to keep it that way, unfortunately. This was very early on my channel, and this was back when I shot things on my iPhone, so I think it's for the best. It's pretty bad. The source material is pretty bad, not just writing wise, but also in terms of the age gap and how that was handled. But I was pleasantly surprised by the movie and how they address this issue and the changes that they made. So the whole story of The Idea of You is about this 40-year-old woman named Selene who falls in love with a young pop star named Hayes. Apparently this Hayes character is loosely based off of Harry Styles. I don't know when this man is going to catch a break. So in the book, Selene is a mother to a middle school girl, and her daughter is obsessed with the band that Hayes is in and is obsessed with Hayes, and that is a huge conflict in the book. Her daughter being like, I can't believe you took the man of my dreams. You're trying to ruin my life, Mom. Why do you hate me so much? Which, honestly, real. Like, imagine the celebrity crush you had when you were younger, and then imagine that your mom locks them down. Like, that is a villain origin story. Also, in the book, Hayes is 20 years old, so there's a 20-year age gap, and yes, it's legal, but it is also towing a line, and it's told from the perspective of Selene, and she makes so many weird comments in the book about the age gap, and it feels very, very icky reading some of them. So we have a pretty low bar here, but in the movie, I believe Selene's daughter is like 16 or 17 and isn't super invested in the band or anything. I think she used to be a fan, but isn't really anymore. So that conflict between her and her mom just isn't there in the movie, which is good in my opinion. Also, Hayes is like 25 or 26, which is also a lot better because at least he's been an adult for a handful of years and can order a drink at a bar. And you know, Anne Hathaway and Nicholas Galitzine are very good actors, so even when the dialogue was off or the writing was a little off, they made it better. So I think all things considered, as an adaptation, it did the story much better than the book, and I think it deserves credit for that, so I'm gonna put that in the second tier. Now we have One Day, which was written by David Nicholas, and it was turned into a movie in 2011 and also turned into a series just earlier this year. I watched the series, not the movie, and then after I watched the show, I picked up the book. So this is a decade-spanning love story between 2 friends, Dexter and Emma, and I watched the show a few months ago and I bawled my eyes out. And then I tried to read the book, and then I had to eventually put it down because I got too emotional. Seriously, I recommend this show and this book if you need to get the ugliest cry out. Based on the chunk of the book I read, some of the changes that they made to the show that I like is that they made Emma's friend Tilly more of a touchstone in her life. I think Dexter is more likable in the show, and the chemistry is really good, and I've seen people compare this show and this book to Normal People, but I have to say, I much preferred this to Normal People. I enjoyed it, so I'm gonna put One Day at the top. Now we have The Lovely Bones. The Lovely Bones is a book by Alice Sebold, and it is about a girl who gets brutally sexually assaulted and murdered, and then she watches over her friends and family grieving her death and moving on from it, all from heaven. Yeah, it's bad. I did not like it. It's pretty graphic, it's pretty disturbing, and I think it should have been marketed more as an adult book rather than a YA teen book. And it's not just written very well aside from that. Like, for example, it has one of my favorite eye descriptions in a book ever. Small ferocious olives. Yes, eyes described as small ferocious olives. I would have honestly preferred the classic orbs. So there was already a low bar, and then they go ahead and make a bad adaptation. I honestly think that Stanley Tucci and Saoirse Ronan did a really good job in it, and that's the only really good things that stand out to me. So that's kind of all I have to say about that, so I'm going to put this one at the bottom. Next is Gong Girl, which was written by Gillian Flynn, and it is a crime thriller book about a woman named Amy Doon who frames her husband Nick for her disappearance. The book is really good, and I'd say that the movie is also really good. I believe Gillian Flynn also wrote the adaptation for the movie, and David Fincher directed it, so it was a good adaptation for sure. I think the things that the book did better were things that you would expect would be hard to translate to the screen. For example, I think the book did better in terms of showing Amy's intentions and showing that she's heartless with anyone she dislikes, not just romantic partners. But on the other hand, the book can be a hard read because you are inside this character's head, and sometimes you're gonna need to take breaks. At least for me, that was the case. But it was a good book and it was a good movie, so I'm gonna put Gone Girl at the top. Next is Never Let Me Go, and Never Let Me Go is actually a really good dystopian novel by Kazuo Ishiguro, and it is set in the late 90s in dystopian England where people have their lives prolonged because of a state state-sanctioned program for human cloning. It was developed into a movie, and I would say it's a very faithful adaptation. The acting was really good, the tone was done right. Also, Andrew Garfield, Carey Mulligan, and Keira Knightley, like, hello. But I also feel like it focused a little too much on the love triangle in the movie, and they missed the opportunity to include a lot of other things that happened in the book, because the book is not a long book. It's just under 300 pages, so they could have covered a lot. Still pretty good, so I'm gonna put this one in the second tier. Now we have The Maze Runner. The Maze Runner is a YA dystopian novel series by James Dashner, I think. Yes. Developed into a movie series, and it is about a group of teenagers in a dystopian world set in the future where they're teleported into a giant maze and they have no memory of how they got there or how to get out. I remember when I was younger finding the book to be just okay. Like, I think I enjoyed it, but also I don't think it was one of my favorites, and I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much today. I remember thinking the book was kind of slow, but then it really picked up. But the movie, however, was lacking because it had so many plot holes and so much ambiguity, and it didn't develop the characters that well, and it was just vastly different from the book. And if you think the first movie is different from the first book, you have to read and watch the sequels, because the Maze Runner sequels make absolutely no sense. But it had Dylan O'Brien. No, they were bad. I'll put them in the third tier just to give them some credit to the first one and to Dylan O'Brien. Next is You. I'm sure we've all heard of You because it is a very famous Netflix series starring Penn Badgley. It is based off of a book series, and the story is essentially about a man named Joe Goldberg who stalks and preys on and murders women. Yay. The first book, although an extremely hard read because Joe is absolutely insane, was honestly solid, and the adaptation for season 1 was pretty solid in the sense that it remains largely faithful to the book, aside from like Joe being more heinous in the books, to be honest. However, in my personal opinion, the sequels in terms of the books and the Netflix series went downhill, because what was season 4? I had to drag myself through that. And like, I'm sorry, it just really lost me, so I'm gonna put it in the third tier. So now we have a beloved favorite of the internet, and that is It Ends With Us by none other than Colleen Hoover. I finally gave it a shot without using my money, and the book and the movie are just like, listen, I knew I was going to be disappointed, and that's exactly what happened. Can I just say, I was not fully prepared for how large of a role Ellen DeGeneres has in the book, because the main character writes letter after letter to her, and that's a huge part of the book. And that being mostly cut out of the movie was probably the best decision that they made. I wouldn't say that the performances were bad. I would honestly more so say that the writing was bad, and the costumes choices were made. They were pretty questionable, but I see the vision. Actually, no, I don't. That's a lie. Listen, I had heard enough about this story to know how I would feel about it, but I've pretty much confirmed that this is going to go at the bottom. And now we have Ender's Game, which is a YA classic science fiction novel by Orson Scott Card. It is about a kid named Ender who gets sent to a training academy in orbit above Earth to train to become a soldier to one day battle an alien race. I read the book when I was much younger, and I really liked it, and then I was severely disappointed by the movie because it was just a lot different in ways that didn't work for me. I think it captured the essence of the book and did a good job in terms of casting and special effects. But in the book, Ender spends so much of his time in training at the battle school, which is a huge part of showing his development from a naive child to a literal battle strategist. But because they had to condense so much into this movie, the development there was really lacking. Also, the romance between Asa Butterfield and Haley Steinfeld in this movie, like, that wasn't there in the books. Why was it there? I didn't want it there. So I'm gonna put this one in the second to last tier. Second to last is Persuasion by Jane Austen, a story about a second chance romance, and like other Jane Austen books, there are many adaptations for this. I watched the 2022 Netflix movie starring Dakota Johnson, and I didn't really like it. I think when you're handling period pieces, you either just gotta commit to the era or commit the other way, because they wanted to make this very contemporary. They wanted to make it modern so that it was accessible to a modern audience, when it didn't really work for me, and I feel like that wasn't necessary. Like, when I say commit to the era or commit the other way, I mean like Clueless, where you know it's not trying to be a part of the Regency era, it's a modern adaptation. Also, I didn't really like the Fleabag style with Dakota Johnson's Anne looking into the camera and winking and stuff. Like, that did not work for me either. And I don't think I liked her take on Anne too, so I'm gonna have to put this one at the bottom. And lastly, I am ranking Emma, another book from Jane Austen, and no, I'm not ranking Clueless, I am ranking the movie adaptation from 2020 starring Anya Taylor-Joy. I thought this was pretty good, and I liked Anya's version of Emma. I also thought it was pretty true to the Regency era, and they did a good job in terms of storytelling and costumes and cinematography. I also just think that my other point of comparison is the Gwyneth Paltrow version, and I didn't really like that one, and I like this one a lot better, so I'm gonna put this one in the second tier. And that concludes part 2 to my ranking of book to screen adaptations. I think this is a fair ranking. Maybe I was too harsh on Ender's Game, I don't know. Let me know how you guys feel about what I ranked, or how you feel about things that I didn't rank, whether they're adaptations that I just didn't watch or they're an entirely different book series. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already.